What's up, Night Nation? This is Alan Levin from UCF Football Updates on Instagram. And today I'm doing something a little different. I have interviewed former UCF athletes in the past, but it's been more in a Q&A style with a post and a picture and text. Today, I'm doing my first ever recorded podcast, and I'm with none other than UCF great, former UCF starting quarterback, Kyle Israel. Thanks for joining us today, Kyle.
Glad to be here, Alan. We've been looking forward to it over the last couple of days, especially with everything that's been unfolding. So happy to be here with you.
Yeah, me as well, man. So let's talk about that. Obviously, the last 3 weeks has honestly been like probably the craziest few weeks in UCF football history, at least since I've been following the team. A lot of things have transpired, from a new AD to a new head coach to transfers and all types of stuff. So obviously, though, I got to start with, what happened this week. UCF announced that they have hired former Auburn coach Gus Malzahn as our next coach to replace Heupel. So, which comes at somewhat of a surprise, being that, the whole team kind of campaigned for Levy. And while he was kind of on our radar, it felt like somewhat of a surprise. But what was your reaction to when you heard Gus Malzahn was official as UCF's next coach?
Well, I was super excited. I got to be honest with you. Obviously there was a lot of campaigning for some other coaches, some younger coaches, guys that hadn't had head coaching experience. And when we hired Terry as AD, I knew that connection was there from Arkansas State. And I don't think that we can overlook the significance of a connection like that, where you've worked with a guy before. Although it was 1 year, you had a lot of success. Mm-hmm. And then Gus goes on and has 11 years at Auburn. So their connection back then was very, very strong. And you can see what that means to somebody like Danny White taking Heupel to Tennessee, right?
Sure.
You go with what you know. It just so happens that the thing that Terry Mohajir knows is somebody named Gus Malzahn, who, in my opinion, is one of the most elite coaches in college football. So I was thrilled. I was excited. And I didn't really anticipate Gus being a guy that was a true candidate for the job until very recently, and it probably became salient around when Terry was hired.
Sure, absolutely, I agree. I mean, with all the campaigning that the players did, with Levy, and on Twitter, we want Levy, it almost felt like it kind of backed the administration into this corner. But obviously, they didn't go that route. I heard that Levy was a finalist. But do you feel that? Obviously, you just spoke very highly of Malzahn, but do you feel that he's the right guy for the job, being that the players campaigned so hard for Levy, and that the fact that, you have this guy, obviously he's elite, like you said, but he is 55. We wonder, being at the SEC mountaintop at Auburn, to kind of go to a group of five, that's no insult to the group of five, but just to kind of, in a sense, I guess, take a demotion, if you will. Do you feel that he's the right job? Maybe doesn't have the right motivations. He's just trying to get back to the SEC, or maybe he's just trying to coast now that he's been, this massive buyout, or is he the right guy?
I think that's a natural and a normal line of thought to have when you look at somebody like Gus Malzahn, and that's okay. I think, he spoke to a lot of those things in his press conference. Obviously, people say things at press conferences that they know are going to sound good in sound bites. Mm-hmm. and things of that nature. However, I think if, from a human behavior perspective, when you see him talk, when you understand the circumstances and platform that we're providing him, right? A place where you can come and win, you can also recruit, but you don't have the same level of expectations week in and week out as you do at Auburn. And I'm not necessarily talking about calling plays and schematics. I'm talking about with boosters and politically and working the room and doing all these things that have nothing to do with football. And I think that he's super excited about getting back to play calling, which is important to me, which is what separated him from a lot of people, is his ability to call plays and adjustments in game. And secondly, I think when he had that time to reboot, after going for 30 years in coaching, 8 weeks is an eternity. It really is, to be able to sit back and think about what you want to do and how you can get better. So I think he answered a lot of those questions, and I took him at his word, right? At least I did. And so I do think he's the right guy for the job. I think if I'm Dylan Gabriel or anybody that was campaigning for other coaches, I'm pretty excited about the guy that I still got as our head coach. And I think it's a slippery slope, Alan, that we got to be careful about when administration, Dr. Cartwright, a search committee, the board of trustees, they have to make the right decision for the university. And the last thing that they can do is be swayed by any type of social media banter, any type of social media chatter. They can be aware of it, but it can't have any decision-making power in the process, in my opinion, or starting to go down a slippery slope. And I think at the end of the day, our players should be super excited with the coaches that they have now.
I agree. It'd be nice, after having, this happens to a lot of American Conference schools where they kind of go on this Ferris wheel of new coaches every 2 to 3 years. So it would be nice to almost kind of get back to like how you were in school with O'Leary, who was with us for, 10 plus years. Do you think Gus was genuine when he said, I want to build here, and if anyone, would actually stay at UCF and build, watch out? Or do you believe that's kind of just coach speak at a press conference and, he could be gone in 2 or 3 years, just like a hotshot young offensive coordinator like a Frost or a Heupel would? Or is he actually going to stay here for somewhat of the long haul?
Well, I think he certainly has a better chance of staying here for the long haul compared to us going with somebody who's a coordinator in the past and we're giving them their first head coaching job and they haven't sustained that level of financial gain yet that you get from coaching in the Power Five and in a big conference. So I think we're safer on that side, right? He's got the money. And secondly, I think when you consider his age at 55 and when you consider the benefits of, living in Florida, from taxes to weather to even the way that, COVID has impacted the world. I think he's a guy that can stay, and I think that he is the type of national brand coach that we need to pair with the national brand that we've built. And that combination really, I think, elevates you in the national spotlight, elevates you in recruiting. And I think that's why this is a place he thinks he can take into the playoff at 4, 8, or 12 or 16 teams. And it may take a little bit of time to get there. So I think he's inclined to potentially stay. I think it'd have to be the right job, perfect job. And I don't know what that is for him.
Right. Yeah. I think we are, like you said, we're at a critical juncture right now. Like, when I thought about like Levy taking the job, and I was just kind of on the player's side because it was so easy when all of them were doing it. But then I started really thinking, it's like, wow, like I didn't think about like these TV contracts come up in the bigger picture. He could be really that guy that gets us to this next level. And, that's the cool part about it. But yeah, so before I kind of dive into your UCF career, I just want to talk about, what you're doing now. I mean, obviously I've been following you on Instagram. I know for a while you're playing some pro ball in Poland and you even played for the Orlando Predators. But now it seems like you're kind of like a serial entrepreneur. I would love to just kind of hear, what are you up to these days professionally?
Yeah, so for the last 5 years, I was very heavily involved in Little Greek, which is a fast casual franchise up here in Central Florida, Tampa and Texas, and helped grow the market here from no locations to 12 locations, and we'll be opening our 13th, 14th, and 15th this year. Wow. At the same time, I was able to reconnect with now my co-founder and CEO, our CEO at Nestry Health and Performance, Dr. Tommy Shavers, who was a football player at UCF, a captain between 98 and 2000. And so we've put Nestry together. Nestry is an acronym for NeuroStrength, and we're a mental and cognitive strength and conditioning company. We're currently building an app that's a digital workout environment for the mind and for the brain. And so a lot of the work that we've done early on has been in the cognitive decline space, putting a special emphasis on CTE and working with players that have struggled with cognitive decline in that regard. And Dr. Shavers had his own story and how he healed himself from a decade of cognitive decline after suffering concussions while being a player at UCF. So really excited about that. We are a startup, so we're fundraising right now, about to go into a fundraising round, and really excited about taking this opportunity for people to get better, both mentally and cognitively, into the digital tech space. So doing that every day, and then doing a couple other projects here and there. I got a couple of things that we're going to release soon here that are in a space that people probably wouldn't anticipate me being in, but really excited about some of those projects. And then just trying to add value wherever I can, man, at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's
wake
great.
Up and say, where can I add value? And for right now, that's with Nestry still working the network with Little Greek as well.
Okay, so are you finally officially hanging up the cleats? Because I've seen you go back from time to time, retire, and then kind of go back, whether it's overseas or in the AFL, or is it over, the playing days?
Yeah, playing days are over. I mean, the novelty of playing football, the pursuit, that dopamine release that you get when you're going after something, being in a part of a locker room and in a team environment, those relationships. Once you step out of that, it's really hard to find that again. That was one of the things that I think I noticed the most when I graduated from UCF. I kind of had this loss of identity. I started suffering from depression because I was really in this strange transition. And I think a lot of student athletes struggle with that. And so that's part of what our emphasis is at Nestry is to change that narrative. But no more football playing for me. I did it up until the body let me, and I enjoyed it. But I've played all over the world. I got everything out of the game that I wanted to. Played in Russia, Poland, Germany, and was happy to play with the Predators here for part of the season before I hurt my elbow to kind of cap off my career. And it was a fun 18 years.
That's cool, man. Yeah, I mean, not a lot of people make it as far as you did. You got to play professional ball all over the world and got a lot of really cool experiences. Yeah. But I'd like to talk about your time, at UCF. So you were a senior in 2007, which was my freshman year at UCF. So I got to campus, and that was when we got our first year at the on-campus stadium. And it was just, changed the name. We almost changed the name to the Knights from Golden Knights. And it was just kind of an exciting time coming up. And, that 07 season was, honestly, in my mind, the first special year in UCF football history, at least that I can remember, because it was a 10-win year. We won the conference championship. It was just an all around kind of exciting year. So kind of talk about being part of that first, really exciting UCF team. I mean, fans packed the stadium for quite a few games, the conference championship, a bowl game against an SEC opponent. Kind of just talk about being part of that squad.
Yeah, I'd be remiss if briefly I didn't, at least acknowledge there were a lot of really good football players and football teams that our program has had, for the past 30 years. There really are, and a lot of guys that have had an impact at the NFL level. But I think for me, I chose UCF. Coach O'Leary called me his first day on the job right after his press conference, and really put a stake in the ground and said, we're going to change the future of this program. And you'll come back in a decade, Kyle, and we'll have an on-campus stadium that you'll help christen, and you'll have set this foundation. Well, fast forward to how it actually happened. We get an on-campus stadium by my fourth year there, and we're able to go win a conference championship. And I think that year, obviously the stadium on campus, but the success while having the natural energy was there for being the first year of an on-campus stadium. I think that all together just created an incredible environment, an incredible atmosphere. And so to have a couple nationally televised games and a conference championship game at home against Tulsa, against Coach Malzahn, calling plays for Tulsa, it was just a super special time. And I think I always kind of pictured when I went to UCF, taking Coach O'Leary at his word, which was kind of unpopular at the time, me choosing UCF over Florida State or Mississippi State or Penn State. And so I said, I'm going to be a guy that's going to help build this foundation among many others. And we kind of reached what I thought was that foundation building almost in the time that we were there by winning that conference championship. And so to do it the way that we did it with great defense and an incredible offensive line. And obviously Kevin Smith was, arguably one of the best players we've ever had at UCF, still a great friend to this day. It was just an exciting time. It really was.
Sure was. Yeah. And that's perfect. That leads into my next question was, you got to play with 24K, and in my mind, he's inarguably a top 3 or 4 player in UCF history. Yeah. Some could argue maybe number 1. Obviously, that usually goes to a quarterback. But in my mind, obviously, top 3. What was that like being around him, being his presence? I mean, you were handing off the ball to a guy that, almost broke Barry Sanders', single season college rushing record. Obviously, he didn't get a ton of national exposure at the time, but what he did, I mean, it felt like every play he took it for 80 yards. It was just ridiculous. And then, he ended up getting drafted that year in the 3rd round by the Lions. What was it like playing with a player that special?
No, I mean, it was incredible. And it was something that was recognized right away. A quick story. The summer skeleton practices, 7-on-7 practices, were always run by the quarterback. So at the time, Stephen Moffitt and I. and all the freshmen had come in for summer B. And so they were kind of integrating into this pass skeleton practices that we'd have twice a week. Well, we're out there I think the first day, and Stephen Moffitt has the first team offense going in this direction with the backups there. And then really the freshmen are kind of trying to figure it out on the other end of the field for their first pass skeleton session. Well, Kevin, first day out there, steps into the offensive huddle. And we had a guy at the time named Jason Peters, who was a really good JUCO running back, had a really good season in 2000, I think 4 or 5. Yeah, 4. And Kevin basically just stepped in and said, I'm the starting running back. And Stephen Moffitt was like, no, dude, you got to go over to that field. And he's like, there's no reason for me to be there. Like, I'm going to be the starting running back for this team. And he said it with a straight face, and he meant it. And he literally had that intensity and mentality the entire time he was at UCF. And he was a great inspirational vocal leader. I think that's maybe overlooked the most. Like, we all look to Kevin as a leader, both on the field, on the sideline, in the weight room.
Sure.
And so, and listen, I had the best seat in the house, right? I tried to make sure that he had an advantage from an audible perspective in running where we had more linemen than they had defenders. You know, that was my job a lot of the time, to get us to that and then turn around and watch some of the best runs in our school's history. And yeah, just I think 40 or 50 yards shy of breaking Barry Sanders' record, but still nonetheless just an incredible feat. I think we played UAB. He had over 300 yards rushing in that game, which I still remember very well. I think ESPN actually did something when we won the conference championship.
They apologized to him, right?
They apologized to him. Maybe I'll just link that to the comment section of this video.
Yeah.
Because it was pretty unique and funny.
Yeah, that was a special year for me. I didn't know what I was walking. I mean, I went into UCF like growing up, I was the biggest NBA fan. I was a huge Miami Heat fan. I mean, still am. But like, I actually didn't really even like football, NFL, or college until I literally stepped in foot for that Texas game in 2007, and I just fell in love with UCF football, and then college football became my favorite sport by far. So to walk into that, I had no idea who Kevin Smith was, and then I learned about him real quick. It was pretty cool to see. But going off that team, a lot of people, that follow my page are a little bit younger, so they don't know about the George O'Leary days. And, that was my first head coach, as a fan. And I asked this to every single interview or every single former player that I work with or that I interview, if they played under O'Leary. What was it like playing for O'Leary? Because he was just kind of that old school, like just, a hard ass type of guy. And I always get at least one really good story from you guys about him. So whatever you feel comfortable saying, just some story that may not be out there, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, there's honestly so many. I think one of the incredible things, as I think about a good story, I think one of the incredible things is things that Coach O'Leary has said when he got on campus in 2004. It's so interesting how like that word or that language can stay inside the program for so long. Because I still, when I've been back in the last year or two and in the locker room or on the practice field, I still hear all these O'Learyisms that have kind of just stayed in the fabric of the program over all this time. And I think my point being is he was that unique. He was very challenging to play for. He was very demanding, both of his players and of his coaches. And at times, I don't know that he understood what got the best out of the talent that he had. Now, don't get me wrong. He made a lot of guys really good who were under-recruited. But people don't always respond to that style of coaching very well. And so you ask yourself, was he getting the most out of his players when he absolutely had to, when it was most critical? My point to that also being, when you look at what we did in 2015, we didn't win a football game. We go undefeated in 2017, 2 recruiting classes cycle. You argue that we basically had half of the same team and went literally undefeated. Now, I think a lot of that was style of coaching, style of coaching players through love, like Coach Frost did, rather than through toughness. And so that was just his style, and he had a lot of success with it. There's some stories that are hard, unless I'm doing an impersonation, are hard to do, but I will just say this. I mean, there are things that Coach O'Leary said and did that literally haven't left me from when I was playing, and that are a part of my everyday life now. But I think at the end of the day, people should know, despite anything funny you hear or anything bad about him that you may hear, Coach O'Leary, when you were one-on-one in his office, man to man, he let the guards come down, and he was willing to, help you in any way that he could. He was tough in the team environment. He ran a tight-knit program, but we needed that, Allen, so bad at that point in our school's tenure. And it took that to turn us in the direction that we're in. And it took somebody staying like 12 years to turn us in that direction. So I give him a lot of credit, and he deserves it.
Yeah, he was just the right man for the job. I mean, he deserves a lot of credit for building that foundation. I mean, he might have been tough, and his style of attitude and I guess temperament may not be great for today's kids, but I think that's exactly how he helped get where we needed to become to get an on-campus stadium and kind of start to get into that top 25 program. And then, from there, then you had the guys like Frost that really just modernized the program. So you got to give O'Leary as much credit as possible. But, what's it like, as a former player, what's it like seeing this progression, going from Conference USA to the American, to, having that first undefeated season, to having college game day on campus? What's it like, seeing, that you were part of the foundation that was built, but what's it like seeing, really just UCF football explode over the past 5 years and just reaching these new heights?
Sometimes it's hard to even comprehend. I'll be completely honest with you. I mean, there were times, and it, that like a football season to somebody like me certain years was kind of like, I don't, I don't, it's important to me, but like I got more important things. I think that's really completely evolved. And obviously you have a lot of pride. Obviously, there's this part inside of me, if I'm being selfish, that said like, well, yeah, this is why I chose to come here. Like I told myself at 18 that I was going to be a part of like laying a foundation so this could come to fruition. And it's like, damn, it did. Or like it is. I can see it like in real time now. And so to have that perspective is really, really cool and unique. And then at the same time, I think, to see UCF grow into the community, into the Orlando community, we were kind of made fun of for a while. You can't finish.
Right.
A school that people only commute to. Like we've come so far in obviously sports and athletics, but just as a school and a university. And I take a lot of personal pride in that, not in a selfish way, but just in a self-validation way. Like, yeah, a lot of that tough time that we went through, and I was even playing when we were in the MAC conference. So we've come quite a long ways from there, and we've done it in a short amount of time. And again, I think Gus and his brand, personally, is just the right type of piece that we needed to be able to continue this ascent. Because ultimately, you need that extra flavor, right? We went undefeated. We had a pretty enticing coach in Scott Frost, but you kind of need that extra level if you want to break into what is the college football playoff, how it's set up now.
I agree with you 100%. So I would love to hear your perspective on this. Like, I think a lot of fans became fans of UCF, after 2017, 2018, where over the course of 2 years, they saw one loss and they saw top 10 and all this. And I get this, I see it whether it's on the message boards or on my account where, for example, you go 6-4 this year, and then you have the people that are a little bit older. They go, well, back in my day, 7, 8, 9 wins, you don't even know how far we come. You got to appreciate it. And I understand that perspective, but my counter to that is like, shouldn't we have expectations now? Like, shouldn't we not accept 6-4? And don't get me wrong, I know undefeated and one loss every year is completely unrealistic. It's unrealistic for most schools besides the Alabamas and the Clemsons and whatnot. But what do you think? I mean, which side should you be on? Should you be like, oh, well, you just got to appreciate that, 8 wins is considered bad now? Or is it no, like our expectation should be conference championship, top 25 ranking, and at least contending for a New Year's Six bowl year in and year out?
No, I tend to agree with the latter. I think that where we're at in our conference, We should expect to be in a conference championship game, winning a conference championship, and playing in a New Year's Six bowl game. Everything else basically is out of our control, right? Beyond that. But that stuff is very much in our control. And I think where we're located compared to certainly some other teams in our conference. And with the momentum that we've built, which I think is very important over the last 4 years, the expectation is to win. Now, I think one of the things that was maybe magnifying and more frustrating this year is that at 6-4, we at a minimum should have been 8-2.
Agreed.
Right. And there's probably you probably could have been 9-1.
Right.
So I think that really soured the fan base going, it's not like we just know we're not good enough and let's build on recruiting and let's go. Like we were up by 21 points in the third quarter against Memphis. Like, you're not supposed to lose those games.
We wasted the talent.
Yeah. I think that really kind of puts a lot of the extra layer of pressure on, and really, we should have been 9-1, 10-0. Like, we had the talent to do that. And I'm okay with that expectation at this point in time, because I think we've grown to a place where we can demand it. And that expectation is felt by recruits. That expectation is felt by the players. And I think I'd rather have that expectation as a player than not.
I agree with you. And that kind of raises a good point. I mean, do you kind of think, you had said how like some years you're kind of like, while it's important to me, you're like, I don't know how the team's going to be. And honestly, it really felt that way until honestly 2018, because you think about heading into Frost's first season, you thought 6 wins, that seemed like it would made sense. And then 2017, no one had any idea we were going to be that good. So do you think we're kind of over that inconsistency phase where I feel like other than 2018, 2019, and 2020, every single year I'm like, oh, we have a good team, we're going to be good, but I have no idea if we'll be ranked. But now it's starting to feel like it's a letdown if we're not ranked preseason or at least some point during the season. Do you think we're kind of over that inconsistent of yo-yo seasons where we're sometimes good, sometimes elite, sometimes bad? Or are we going to be more often than not pretty good, 8+, 9+ wins, for the foreseeable future, year in, year out?
Yeah, I think we should be beyond that now. I think we should be in the 8-win, 9-win category. I think a lot of that has to do with your quarterback. I really think it does. We've been lucky to have a string of guys, even with DJ Mack, in the points that he played for us. He definitely won us a conference championship against Memphis in 2018. So I think a lot of it has to do with, can you recruit a quarterback that is playing at a really high level? But I think with Gus Malzahn, here's the thing. He's going to be a balanced guy. Our running game was a head scratcher for the last 2 years. He's going to find a way to run the ball, power run it, get Florida speed, Florida size, dominate at the front, up front at the line of scrimmage. And if we're doing those things in our conference, we should be a 8, 9, 10, 11 team every year. And I'm okay with those expectations now. But it is a new thing. And I think probably 2 years ago, I was like, just savor it, guys. I don't know, this isn't going to be like this forever. Trust me, we've been like this, just eat it up. But now with what we have, and, I'm really interested to see what name, image, and likeness does to the whole recruiting sphere and how that impacts our program. But with that aside, I think we should have high expectations. And I think Gus will improve recruiting, which is where I don't think we've brought our success on the field and recruiting in line with that. And I think Gus can do that.
I agree 100% there. So a couple more questions. Just kind of, you talked about, how last year, the talent was there, yet we went 6-4. And I'm sure you've heard it. There's so many complaints about Heupel. I don't want you to necessarily talk about what the fans had, but I mean, what do you just think Heupel's legacy is at UCF, or should be, or how do you think his legacy is?
Well, I mean, he's a guy that came in and won a lot of football games, right? Let's look at that first and foremost, because at the end of the day, people, when it's convenient, like to say it's all about wins and losses, and then when it's not about that, you pick everything else apart. But he won a lot of football games here. I think he's going to be remembered for maybe some of the close games that we lost, where we could have won. And I think ultimately he's going to be a guy that helped us secure getting Dylan, right, after Coach Frost left, and was able to put up a ton of yards and a ton of numbers. But I think that's where it ends to some extent. And listen, if there's one thing, and I've talked to guys inside the program, as recently as today, from the past staff, there needs to be more discipline in this program. And we saw that discipline, those struggles with discipline matriculate onto the field, right, with penalties and with personal fouls. And one thing that Gus is going to have to do is really establish a level of discipline inside the program because, and I'm confident you can't win in the SEC being undisciplined. There's too many other ways to get beat. Undisciplined is not a way that you should choose, and those teams definitely usually don't. So I'm excited to see if he can pull in kind of the reins on the discipline of the program. That doesn't mean not allowing players to have fun and be a coach's coach. That means just have very high expectations for how you handle your business when you're on the field and off the field, and that should be expected at this level of football.
All right, and then finishing up here, what I don't think Josh Heupel left the cupboard bare at all. There's still plenty of talent on both sides of the ball, in my opinion. Even just starting with Dylan Gabriel and Vontavious Thompson and Jay Flash, and then defensive side maybe is a little bit of a talent drain, but there is definitely some ballers. Kalia Davis is coming back. Some of the D line is pretty good. Morris Brash, but what should be the expectations in Gus Malzahn's first season? From a win-loss perspective, or just in general, like what's the outlook for the team next year?
Wow, that's a very tough question, Alan. I think that if we have this warm and fuzzy feeling that Dylan and Gus are on the same page and Coach Malzahn are on the same page, here over the next month or two, right? If we start to feel that vibe matriculate out into social media in any way, shape, or form that it may, I think that'll be a really good sign for when I start to really consider my expectations for the season. Listen, I think I'm excited to see what Vontavious can do. Kevin Smith, had been telling me about Vontavious since he recruited him, and how excited he was and how much of the real deal he was when he got his time to shine. So I think that we can be really good at the running back position. I think he'll be good in this offense. We'll see how some of these things unfold with wide receivers, but we've added some new talent, a lot of it unproven. And that's a place we haven't been in a long time, right? So, not having for sure – we have Flash out there, but not having for sure guys at those wide receiver spots. I think that if we can win, considering some of the games on our schedule, I think if we finish the season as a 10-win team in some way, shape, or form, I'll say, man, that was a pretty good year. Context matters, right? How do you win games? How do you lose games? Could you, should you, was it obvious? All that context does matter when you're looking at expectations. But when you hire a coach who comes in this motivated and hungry, if he can get guys to buy in, he's got a young defensive coordinator that I think will get guys to gel and become sticky as a defensive unit, which I think a sticky defense is just better on the field when they're unified. I think we saw in our defense this year, number one, from COVID and opt-outs, number two, from injury, number three, from everything else that happened. We saw the stickiness kind of fade away from our defense, and they always kind of looked out of sync, especially versus BYU. I think that our coach can bring that stickiness back together. So, I think we should be able to compete. Cincinnati's going to be very good. They got a lot of guys coming back, including their quarterback. So I think it'll be tough to win the conference. But if Coach Malzahn and Dylan are on the same page, I'm at least confident that we'll be able to be in all the football games and have a chance to win them.
All right, great. And then my two final questions for you, they're both personal questions. What was your favorite moment at UCF at playing days? And do you consider maybe getting into coaching at UCF, getting on the staff at some point? I know you have businesses going on right now, but is that something, coaching, in your future?
I think I'll answer the second question first. A lot of the stuff that I'll be doing both now and in the future is mental and cognitive, strength and conditioning coaching in different ways, shapes, or forms. So yes, I do want to coach, whether or not I'm a coach, as a quarterback coach or something along those lines at the collegiate level. I think that timing and connections and network, all that plays a huge role in that, right? And coaching football is so incestuous. You get on the coattails of a coach and you just ride them all the way up to the top and then kind of branch out. So if you get into that at my age at 35, 36, 37, you never know. That's a very unclear scenario how that would unfold. But I'm definitely open to, being in the corporate world, in a sports and health tech business, and maybe later in my career transitioning into, somewhere in athletic administration, an AD role where you can pair your last corporate experience into the college football, college athletics landscape. So I will see, but I do enjoy working with players from a mental and mindset perspective, all people, not just players. And secondly, I think the moment that was really incredible, in my time at UCF, I'd like to say the Texas game because, just the environment, sitting in the locker room, hearing the fans stomping their feet on the bleachers, like feeling that visceral vibration, like I can't find that again, like anywhere. And so like it's when you feel that and it's gone, it's like, where do I find it? That moment was truly special. But I think the conference championship, winning that at home in front of our fans on campus in a brand new stadium on ESPN, in the first time I talked to Coach Malzahn, I'll remind him that we beat him twice that year in 2007 when we played him just for fun. But I think that conference championship was incredible. Tulsa had beat us in 2005 in the conference championship game for us to get some redemption in 2007 in the scenario that I just explained, sending us to the Liberty Bowl, which was a very big bowl for us at the time to get into. Sure. That was a moment, I'll never forget. And for that moment really in those two games for the last time, it's really the last time you're around a lot of your teammates, right? Like you walk off the field and it's like some guys I never saw again. So there's some finality to it. So I'll always remember that game and that win and that celebration.
Well, thank you, Kyle, for joining me today. I really appreciate it. That was awesome. For all the fans out there that will watch this, you could follow Kyle on Instagram at the.kyle.israel and check out everything he has going on. Thank you, Kyle.
Appreciate it, Alan. Keep doing great work, man. I love watching your stuff, listening to your stuff, reading your stuff. I really enjoy it. You're doing a phenomenal job, man.